Boom. What is up, everyone? Yes, sir. It's UFC 301 day, and I got my boy Dan with me to break down these fights here. Hopefully, we'll have JBC in at some point during this show. I cannot promise, but I'm sure that he is. Right now, I put him at questionable, but he's more on the probable side of questionable in the injury report right now, even though he's not injured, but he's fine. He's just indisposed right now. So we'll get through it. He'll be here at some point to bring some winners. But until then, we got Dan anyway. So who needs fucking JBC?
That's right. That's right. He's on track, though. I think he's on track to join us. But
man, he's definitely on track to play or to be on the show. So he should be good to go. So what's the odds like JBC over under 2 hours on the toilet per day? Like are we going under 2 hours, over 2 hours? Like what do you think that is, Dan? Would you go over or under?
Oh man, I really don't care to speculate on that.
I'm going over. If you're not going to say it, I'll say it. I'm going over. I think this man spends a shitload of time per day on the toilet. So just from the messages he sent me about like being held up and stuff like that per day, it's an everyday thing for him. So I'll go over, but you can plead the fifth, I guess.
Pass.
So there we go. If you like the shit talk, literally, hit the like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. We're obviously here to talk MMA winners today. Hopefully we can get a little better, at least for me anyways, a little bit better than last week debacle for myself. Dan, how'd you do last week? Anything from you?
I lost like 50%, which in MMA is like not the worst, honestly. Where did I go wrong last week? Oh, well, we were talking about it. It's like I was even on Yan Top, even maybe slightly under, and I was fine with that. But the fatal error I made, is like JBC pointed out after it happened, was like it wasn't enough to be under or fading Yan Top. You had to have Padilla as well because he was the nuts. So I kind of failed there. So not a great week, but a middling week, I'd say. And it's like survive and advance type shit. How about you? You said bad, right?
Yeah. I didn't have the best weekend. So hopefully I at least hit my biggest bet, which was, I think I gave it out on the show. I'm blank. It was David Onama, the dog. That was one of my biggest bets of the card. So I at least hit that, and it salvaged some of my other misses, my swings and misses. So I was happy at least I hit that. And shout out to David Onama. That guy is a friggin' dog. I mean, just absolute in every sense of the word, just absolute dog. Those are the guys that I love putting my money behind, Dan. They fight for even when they're dead, they still fight for every single cent of your money. So I love those. When I can get dog money or dog prices on David Onama, I'm always in to dabble. But we got a new card. We got more fights to talk about. Obviously, the main fight in this card is going to be interesting because you got Pantoja, who's fought everybody pretty much and fought everyone multiple times now, I guess. And now he gets a new test in Steve Erceg. So we'll get there. We'll get to that fight, obviously. But I do think it's interesting that Erceg got the call. I know there were some other guys in the division, I think, that were injured. Dan, what'd you think of the Erceg call up for this fight? Do you think it was like kind of too soon, or what'd you think just before we get into the full card?
It's kind of just one of those things where like it is what it is. They needed something for the top of this Brazilian card. Pantoja's cleared out the division. Erceg kind of, right place, right time. Impressive knockout victory. Impressive. The knockout itself was impressive, even if the, competition, maybe not so much. But, it's just right place, right time. Like title shots in the UFC aren't necessarily always merit-based. So this is a little bit of a situation.
It's a good point, too, because like Sean Strickland, when he got his chance, I know people didn't love that, I don't think. And then, he ends up winning and everyone's like, holy fucking shit. But like, and it's fighting. Anything can happen. So
yeah. Same deal with I believe the consensus or was pretty similar when O'Malley fought Aldo as well.
Yeah, definitely. And now look at that. Everyone's like Sean O'Malley's the greatest now. So, he went from, being like, oh, I don't know about this to the best. But
yeah,
that's all right. We'll get to
quite there though. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to the fight. It's very interesting. The line, it's very, very interesting. It's very similar to the Brandon Royval line in that fight going into it, in my opinion, just from like the line perspective. Not the fighters are the exact same, but just the line kind of similar to that. So we'll get there. Let's start though at the bottom and we'll work our way up. And we start actually funny on this card. We start with a guy who Erceg just beat. You know what I mean? In Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas here. 8,200 for Costa, Borjas at 8K. And like I said, we just saw Costa coming off his last fight was a loss to the guy who is fighting for the belt on this card here in Steve Erceg. And I'll start with that fight, Dan, because that fight was really interesting. And if you watch that fight, Costa, it's not like Erceg dominated him. It's not like Erceg won a convincing 30-27 and just outdogged him for the entire 15 minutes. What happened in that fight was Steve Erceg put on kind of like mirroring pressure where he was just in his face the entire time. And in the first round, Costa lost clearly. In the second round, Costa put Erceg on his back foot and just said, I'm going to try and make this a war. Ended up winning that round. And then in the third round, both guys were a little tired, and Erceg literally won because he controlled him pretty much up against the fence for 3.5 minutes. Like literally, it was one of those fights. So Costa is a legit dude. Like he literally, 2 of his first 3 fights were against Albazi and Erceg. And those were his 2 losses. Like those aren't bad losses, Dan. So it's not like he's coming in. I know he's, 1-2 here, beating Flick, obviously, but his 2 losses were not against bad competition. They were against top ranked type dudes. Albazi could be going for the belt too, right? So I think he's injured though, or something like that. Right. Yeah, I mean, Costa's a legit dude, I think, in this division, who's just kind of gotten up against 2 really good competitors in 2 of his first 3. And then Borjas had to fight Joshua Van in his last fight, who I think is a really good fighter as well. So his first fight. I think the UFC really likes both these guys. I think this is a really good fight. I think it's going to play out that way. I think Kevin Borjas' speed on the feet is going to be where I lean as the determining factor in this fight. If Borjas can keep this on the feet for 3 rounds and Costa can't get his grappling and wrestling going, I think the speed is going to be too much for Costa because Costa loads up on his shots. He's got power. It's not a volume thing, though, with him. So I think Borjas with volume would just piece him up if this stayed standing. So I'm going to go Borjas. I like him to win here. I like him for DFS at 8K, but this is a good fight to target, I think, for DFS, because I think if Costa wins, you could see some takedowns and some grappling and control out of him. So what do you see in this fight, Borjas and Costa?
Yeah, so I'm on the opposite side. I'm on Costa, and I agree with a lot of the things you said. I think Costa has had a rough go of it so far with his opponents. You mentioned Albazi and now Erceg fighting for the title. And, he showed a pretty good account of himself in both fights. I think, in the Albazi fight, he was a little too willing to, be off his back, and he ate a lot of ground and pound as a result. But, you would assume that he learned from that. And then on the other side, Borjas, I mean, Costa, the thing is, the reason I'm on Costa is because he's got a huge grappling advantage. Borjas is more one-dimensional. He's got the volume on his side. Let me see what his striking numbers. He's got good volume. It's not anything outrageous. But Costa's also got the power advantage. I think Costa has more avenues to win than Borjas does. But I like both plays. I think it's a good fight. Borjas in his fight with Van, Van was clearly starting to pour on on the volume on him in like the later rounds, and he was starting to slow down. But there were moments in that third round where Boros was still dangerous, and he could have ended the fight had he connected on any of those like final blitzes of his. So I think both of these guys, what is this to go to? Yeah, it looks like it's 55% implied to finish inside the distance. I think the odds of it finishing are actually a little bit better than that. And I'm not finished with my 150, but as far as like my exposure goes, running stuff like raw without like kind of flattening out a little bit, I'm getting 100% of this fight, which I wasn't expecting. But
I think it's a good fight for DFS. So I mean, I don't know if I would go 100%, but
right,
I would be really high on this fight. Like I am
yeah.
really high. What do I have right now? Let me look.
For the price, I mean, like 8,200, 8K flat. Like you don't need anything especially like crazy for those to be optimal.
Yeah,
you know?
I got 80-ish% of this fight right now. And I'm obviously higher on, we're on opposite sides. So I have more of the Borja side, but I do think this fight is a good fight to target for sure. I think it's tough. I think it's tough too to read the both these guys coming in off of like some tough opponents. So it's like, I think Joshua Van's really good. I also think Albazi and Erceg are very, very good too. So it's like, obviously Costa's had multiple, whereas Borjas has only had one. But like you said, Borjas, he's dangerous. Like you say, Costa has a lot of power, but Borjas is very, very dangerous on the feet. Like I think Costa is a little bit easier to like read on the feet because he's loading up a lot more with the shots. Whereas Borjas, it's tough because some of his stuff you just don't see when he blitzes. Like you said, even in the third round, like he was dangerous, and that was when he was tired. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think this is a good fight. You're on Costa, I'm on Borjas, but definitely a good fight to target for DFS. And you think this finishes inside the distance? Is that what you said?
Yeah. It's not especially owned, it's like Costa and Borjas respectively, they're 23 and 19% owned. Ownership is like pretty flat on this slate in general, but like I think for these finish odds, that's pretty good ownership. Spot I don't mind attacking. It's also like worth noting the first fight. I think a lot of people have an aversion to going like maybe as heavy as they should on the first fight a lot of the time because like they don't want their night ruined right off the rip. But it's like it really doesn't matter what order these fights happen in. Like this isn't like a linear thing. So
that is the funny part. Like obviously everyone like doesn't want their night to get ruined like 5-10 minutes into the slate. But what is the difference if it gets ruined 10 minutes in or an hour in? Like you're still pissed off at the end of the day, and you're still like, all right, fuck this. Like, and maybe really, just keep it on, but you move it to the side or something and pay attention to something else. Like
at the end of the day, you need like that one perfect lineup to kind of slip through anyway. And I know a lot of the nights that I've won, like I thought I was dead on arrival, like 1-2 fights in, and then you just have that one lineup that at the end of the night you look and you go, oh shit, like I'm live going into the main event. So maybe not looking early helps with that now, but like it's best to just try to avoid that type of mindset like altogether.
All right, there we go. Costa right now -125 favorite if you like that side. Borjas sitting at a +105 dog. Let's go to the next fight here. Mr. Ismail Bonfim against Vince Pichel. Pichel is a very big dog here against Bonfim. Bonfim -550 right now. And I just think Pichel is like old. I think, he's not in the cage enough. He's older now. His last fight was like almost 2 years ago or around 2 years ago. And he fought Madsen, where in the first round, he got outstruck by Madsen, which is crazy to me. And then he just got like a little out wrestled and stuff like that and lost that fight. But he really didn't show anything. He didn't show like he had like dangerous, like anywhere pretty much, where I was like, oh shit, Madsen's in trouble. Like Pichel showed like no danger. I think now you get Bonfim, who is very dangerous and can finish people. And this is a tough spot for him. So, I love taking dogs when I see a path. I just don't see a path for Bonfim outside of like he somehow gasses in the first like 2 rounds, and then in the 3rd round, Pichel like finds a way to get him out of there. But I just don't see that being the case here. So I got Bonfim 9,300 for DFS. The 9K range is going to be interesting because you got to rank these guys because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of big favorites here, and you got to rank them and how you view them. I do think Bonfim, though, is a solid play at 9,300. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I think Bonfim is a really good like pivot play up there in that range. This fight is kind of similar to last week, like the Victor Henry Ronnie Yaya fight. Pichel, like if you look at his takedown defense numbers, they're awful, but that's because he's like more than happy to go down to the mat. He's a BJJ black belt with no subs in the UFC. So when you talk about paths to victory, like that is concerning. It's like, what is his path to victory? Probably his best quality is his durability, which kind of just lends more credence to playing Bonfim because, it's like with the Yaya fight, he kind of fell down enough and lasted long enough for Henry to rack up like a massive score at, minimal ownership in the top range. So I think Bonfim he's not my favorite pivot up top, but I think he's solid play. It shouldn't be hard to get over on him either because I got him at like 16% projected.
I mean, and another guy, his first 2 fights, he gets Terrence McKinney, who's got a ton of first round finishes. I know he's pretty much 1 round and done, but he's dangerous, right? Like, and he finishes him in the 2nd round, and then he gets blitzed by Saint Denis, who we all know is an amazing fighter. So that, that's fine. You know what I mean? So this dude is definitely like a legit fighter, though. Like very, very good. He can take it to the mat. He can throw. Power is there for sure. So looping power, but it's there. And I could definitely see him finishing Pichel, even though Pichel's his best quality would be durability, I would say. I agree with you if we had to pick one. So, all right, we're both on Bonfim. Do you think he finishes him?
I mean, I have him by decision, but the odds imply that he's like 50% to win inside the distance. So like that's just that's another point in favor of Bonfim. He's 16% owned and he's got like one of the better ITD numbers on the whole card. So you got to like that. For a slate where a lot of the favorites are heavy favorites and the lines are, mostly they seem right. There's actually quite a bit of there are quite a few spots where you can pivot to get different.
Yeah, I think he finishes him inside the distance, but definitely should be a good spot here for DFS. I think Bonfim's a solid play at 9K. Let's go to one of my favorite early fights of the card here, and it's a female fight, just like last week where we had one of our favorite fights to target. And I think she did really well. I think the favorite was the winner, obviously, but I think she did really well for DFS too. And I kind of view this fight as possibly similar where I might just want to be close to all in on this female fight. You got Barbosa and Caris, 2 very opposite fighters, in my opinion. You got one girl who literally is trying to grapple and wrestle you down to the mat in Barbosa. And Caris is the complete opposite. She wants it to stand on the feet, stay standing, and kind of pick you apart. And volume is her game. She doesn't have like big, huge power, but she's got good striking, in my opinion. She's got good striking, decent footwork. It's more just if she can stay off of her back, because when she's in trouble, it's because girls are getting her down to the mat and controlling her for a little bit. The only thing is with her is she's got like literally 5 or 6 fights under her belt. She's very, very raw, Caris, but I do think she's very live as well. Barbosa's clear path is takedowns. It's not like your traditional takedowns, though. She likes those like body locks. She throws literally to get in tight with you, to grab a hold of you, and then either judo, those judo throws that she likes up against the cage, or just the body lock takedowns. those are kind of her paths. And once she gets you down, she is, she's got a decent, really good ground game, and she can sub Carrot Skater for sure. So I do think the paths in DFS for Barbosa is takedowns, where she could rack up a bunch of takedowns, even in a decision win, which could score well. She could also get some takedowns and get a finish with a submission, I think, which could score decent. And if Carrasqueta wins, I think she's piecing her up on the feet with a ton of volume. And we all know those girl strikes, Dan, even just the little ones, right? Those things rack up. And if you watch her like contender series fight, go watch that war she put on. Well, yeah, I forget her opponent, but that was a legit war. She threw, I think, 200. She landed 206 significant strikes in that war she had in 3 rounds. So it was a wild fight. And I definitely could see pressure and volume racking up for her if she keeps it on the feet. What do you see here with this fight, Carrasqueta and Barbosa, Dan?
Yeah, I like Barbosa. I mean, the distinct grappling advantage. Carrasqueta is kind of more like a one-dimensional striker. You mentioned the volume in that contender series fight. Like, if you look at like the sheet that I post with like stats from that one fight, she's averaging 12.27 strikes landed per minute and also absorbing 11.2 in return. So seems to be pretty void defensively, despite, obviously the volume's on her side. But I like Barbosa, man. I think you got to go with the grappling advantage. Barbosa has also shown, she will go in like game plan dependent. It's kind of like a theme on this card. I noticed like there's a couple fighters on here who will go in with like game plans specifically tailored to their opponents. And Carrasqueta is clearly weak on the mat, like not good wrestling, not good grappling. So I think Barbosa should dispose of her in pretty well. No, I actually have her by decision, I guess. And then I don't like look at it again until right now.
I was gonna say, like, I like the submission number though. Like, you're getting like, if you like Barbosa, she's plus 130 by decision. She's plus 225 by submission. Like, I kind of like taking the shot. If I'm betting Barbosa, that plus 225 by submission, I think is kind of interesting.
I think it's a good fight to target. I'm just gonna say Ernesta. I think Ernesta is like a solid dog target. Obviously, like women's MMA dog. She's cheap. She's got the volume, high variance striking exchanges. Like those are all very good things for a cheap dog. And Barbosa's price is slightly concerning. Like she has a ton of grappling upside, but that can get a little dicey. Like we've seen before, you get like an early 3rd round finish and you're kind of getting screwed on the finish points. And if there isn't, a whole lot of activity outside of control in the first couple rounds, then you're not scoring enough. So I think like the bust potential for Barbosa in a win is higher than for Ernesta, obviously. But I think it's an all right fight to target. I'm going to definitely be over on both of them. And
so I'm definitely higher on this fight than you. I love this fight. I'm going to be heavy.
I think it's a good fight.
On this fight. You got a dog who I see as live, and I see a path. And we need some dogs on this card. And then you got Barbosa, who I see with finishing upside, because if she does get it to the ground, she's going for submissions. Like she's not, some girls are, control and position over submission. She's definitely one of those girls. She's going to go for submissions. Like she's not going to be afraid to, get in spots where she's trying to go for finishes here with the subs. So I don't think she can finish on the feet though. Like I don't think she's finishing Carrasqueta on the feet. I think if she finishes, it's on the ground and it's by submission. Whereas Carrasqueta, I don't think she would finish Barbosa either. I think if she wins, it's by decision. I think it's just volume. So you could even go like Barbosa to win by submission or Carrasqueta by decision at minus 125. I think is interesting. If you want to play both sides of it, you can get that like double chance bet on DK. If you don't want to roll with, Barbosa by sub or Carrasqueta money line, I mean, like that's another way to kind of play both sides of the fight and have a chance no matter who wins. So I don't mind that look either. But Yeah, a good fight for me to target in DFS. I definitely like this fight. So let's go to the next fight here. We got Ruffy. We got, I think, Dan's favorite fighter. Do you like
No. I think Joe might have gotten confused in the Discord. No, I made a mistake earlier where I had
I was gonna say, because I saw you had Jamie Malarkey as like a big favorite or something like that on your
I made a
sheet, and
mistake.
then you changed it. I was just giving Dan shit in the Discord. He just had a mistake on his sheet, so I'm just giving him shit right now. But we got Jamie Malarkey and Ruffy here. Ruffy is a favorite, minus 218 on DraftKings right now. Ruffy is, and Jamie Malarkey, I just put as like a guy who, he's nothing special at all, like literally at all. I don't view him as dangerous. Like he's not really a guy for DFS that I want to play. Ruffy at least has upside. The only downside to Ruffy is he is a little lower volume because he's trying to counter you. He's trying to, one punch end you pretty much. And so he will kind of wait. And so the only thing I could see with Malarkey is he could end up like winning rounds with just volume and Ruffy just trying to find that shot where he'll like lose round one and then like he gets behind on the scorecards. So like if Malarkey wins, I think he would win only by decision. I don't see him finishing Ruffy. If Ruffy wins, though, I think he's winning by finish. Like I think he's finding the shot and putting Malarkey out, and that's what I think happens here. So I don't think you're going to get volume. It's like the opposite of like Boros and Caris Gada. If they were to win, I think it's like a ton of volume. Where like Ruffy, I don't think it's volume. I think it's that one punch, and he's good too. Like he's an actual good fighter. I just think at certain points he waits too much. Like he's really relying on that counter, and sometimes that can get you in trouble against like good fighters, especially if it goes to like the scorecards. I just don't think Malarkey is good enough to where he has to worry too much about that. I think he can finish him here. What do you see, Dan?
Yeah, so I think Ruffy, like obviously the problem with him is, like you said, he kind of is like patient to a fault, sort of. So first round finish, maybe like I could actually see it kind of being in the later rounds. Although Malarkey is like very fragile. You cannot trust Jamie Malarkey's chin for anything now. It's just like completely gone. I mean, yeah, and at his price, Malarkey, like I don't really like him. He's like on this slate specifically, he's like a lesser version of Jack Shore, who we'll talk about in a couple fights. I just don't like him. He's not going to score well. I guess the most realistic path for Malarkey that I can think of and like scoring is like Ruffy tries to get him out of there, fails, gasses, and then Malarkey just like wrestle fucks him for the back half of the fight.
I just can't see him like gassing though. Like he
see
doesn't like throw enough to gas out that much, in my opinion. Unless he just goes for broke at some point, like thinks he's dead and tries to finish him. But I mean, maybe that happens. I wonder what's Ruffy to finish him in like the second or third round. Like what is FanDuel's got like those second and third round finishes. I'm trying to see what
Ruffy's
the number is
plus 375 and third round is plus 850. So 21, 11% implied respectively.
So yeah, he's plus 270 on FanDuel to win by KO TKO in rounds 2 and 3. If you want to take rounds 2 and 3, I do like that just because I do think he is patient enough where I could see him, losing that first round, trying to find his range, almost just like figuring Malarkey out, and then in the second or third round, he kind of figures him out and finds the button there and finishes them. So I don't mind that look there, rounds 2 or 3 on FanDuel, or like you said, just taking a shot on DraftKings with the higher odds, getting, would you say plus 850 in the third round?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I mean that's not bad either. So
the problem with Malarkey is like his price, right? So earlier we discussed from last week, Jan Top and Padilla, where it's like if you're gonna be under on a guy like Jan Top, Ruffy is like sort of similar, just in that he's got really good finish odds and he's gonna be kind of higher owned in that range. But whereas like last week you would have wanted to have some taco, it's like I don't feel like like I feel like Malarkey can win and still just not even be optimal because
that's what I feel like happens if he wins. Is he's just not optimal. It's just a decision win. Scores like 65.
It's just not as likely. So I kind of like, I got Ruffy projected as one of the highest owned on the slate at nearly 40%. I don't mind coming in kind of around like mid to high 30s. I think that's fine.
So just like a tad under. I mean, it's a price range that you're going to land in. That like 8,500, 8,600 in 8K, like you're going to land in that area for like 1 or 2 fighters. So in a lot of your builds. So
yeah, I think
he's good. Like literally the only thing I worry about is him just like not finding that shot, and then like it goes to decision. You're like, oh shit! Like he's only scored, even if he won, he's only scoring like 60 or something like that, and you're like, fuck, I'm dead.
Yeah,
like you're not winning with that.
He's definitely got bust potential. That's kind of what I mean, his stats say that his volume is good, but that's not really what I saw when I watched him. He seems kind of a little too patient for my liking. So there's definite flaws there, but like you said, the mid-range on this card is pretty important because the bottom end is ugly.
Yeah. I mean, and who knows too, that was the Contender Series fight. He could have just been really just being a little more patient, trying to wait for that one shot and stuff like that too much. So, you never really know. I guess he could come out and just not respect Malarkey at all and just try and go through him. I just don't think that happened. I think that's the way he fights.
I think the counterpoint to like saying maybe he was a little more patient and jitters, things like that affect everybody different ways. But like Contender Series, it kind of gives me it's not like a major red flag, but when guys are sort of like hesitant to engage on Contender Series, it's like kind of the whole gist of that show is like you are going to like show out in front of Dana and Hunt. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're not going to do it in that environment, it's a little.
Well, that's why I think it might just be his style. You know what I mean? It might just be who he is at some point. But he's skilled. He's still skilled, though. You know what I mean? We're not taking anything away from him. I think he's very skilled. It's just might just be his style. I agree with you though. Like the Contender Series is literally for like, all right, throw caution to the wind and go like war. You know what I mean? Go do the war and see who comes out on top. So yeah, that's all right. We'll move on though. We got another. I think this is a pretty good fight. We got Klouse, we got Silva here. Joaquim Silva is a dog, plus 166 to Jakar Klouse, who is a minus 198 favorite here in this spot. And I do think that Klouse is just a little better everywhere, or close, however you say his last name. Silva, the only thing I will say about him is he does have that like one punch, and he's very athletic, and he's got that like one punch and he'll knock your friggin' lights out. I mean, he had Armin or Sarukian. He literally had Sarukian on skates early in that fight, if you remember that fight. So the dude's got absolute power. He can always get that one punch, but I just think Klouse is just a little bit better everywhere, and I have to go with him. He's 8,700 on DraftKings. I think this is also a fight for DraftKings. You should have some exposure to both sides if you're like 150 or MMEing, because Silva still has that path as a dog to KO you.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's right on. I mean, the thing with Silva though is that like durability is definitely a concern. Like he's very untrustworthy. Not that Klouse is like the most dangerous guy. I don't know. This is one of those fights that like on first look I'm not crazy about, but I know it will like end up costing me to totally ignore it, kind of thing. I don't know. The situation with Klouse is just like so weird. I feel like I take like a walk down Narrative Street every show now, but it's like in his last post-fight interview, and I usually don't leave the fights on this long. It was just like on. And they like asked him for a call out, and he was like, "Just give me the easiest guys. Like I just want to fight the easiest
he just wants
guys."
checks, bro. He wants to rack up checks. It's kind of smart in a way, honestly.
It's fine.
Yeah, like I get it.
This seems like and like you said, like this seems like a matchup that should be like pretty easy for him, honestly. But Silva's dangerous. this isn't a fight that I'm like crazy about, but it's also not one that I'm like running away from, you know?
Yeah.
Silva, I lean more. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think Close wins. His last finish was like pretty fluky. I don't know. Another like there's like multiple red flags with Silva. Like he didn't look awesome against Guida, you know, and that's kind of
Nope.
great. As much as we all love Clay Guida.
I mean, we can love him and still say like, the guy didn't look good against him. So it's kind of a red flag, but
yeah,
like I said, he still has that ability to like one punch and you're out. So,
totally. Absolutely.
those are the guys that like you still want to have little stabs on. I'm not saying to be like crazy overweight. And I agree with you, like on the fight, like there are other guys in that range that we'll get to where I'm like, yeah, I want those guys over like Klouse, but I'll have some of him just because I do think he could find a finish here with Silva, which could score good. But let's go to the next fight, which I think could be a banger here. We got Elvis Brener against, I'm not even going to try to say the dude's first name, but Oralb is his last name. And I think I got that right. Oralb is a minus 260 favorite here. And Brener, I mean, he's come out in the UFC, dog multiple times, found ways to get it done. He scored really well too in 2 of his 3 UFC, fights here. He's 7,200 on this card in Brazil. Brazil, obviously Brazilian. But he's got a tough test here because this Oralb dude looks legit, man. He looks really, really good. Ran through Medic. Someone call the medic for JBC because he's still on the fucking toilet. He might have got stuck, honestly. But he ran through Medic. I think this dude's really good at 9K. The upside with takedowns, control time, finishing upside. I think he's finished 11 of his 14 fights he's had so far in his pro career. So the finishing upside is there, and he can do it either way. He can submit you. He can KO you. Like he's got enough power to KO you. So it's not just like one-sided finishes either. I think he has multiple paths. But Brener is good, man. He's really good. So either way, I think if Oralb wins, whether it's decision or finish, he's got the upside to just break the slate, Dan. So I got to be over on him just with his upside at 9K. I like this fight here, and I like him a lot for DFS.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is completely valid. I think Oralb, like you said, definitely has slate breaking upside. My problem with him is his ownership. Like just just from a process standpoint for me, it's like I still look like his striking is a work in progress and should be getting better like each time we see him, but he is still primarily a wrestler. And I just don't like when your main point of upside is sort of like takedowns and submissions. I don't like playing that at chalk. I just never have. And then on the flip side, Brener, I mean, I think he's very lucky to have the record that he has in the UFC. Kind of like his best quality, and this is always like a red flag for me, is like, and when people will, he's projected to be one of the more popular dogs at his price, and these situations where it's like the best thing you have to say about a guy is like, oh, like he's tough, like he can take a beating. It's like, well, great, he's getting his fucking ass kicked. I love that, right?
but he finds ways. I mean, like there's got to be something
absolutely
to be said for like finding a way to get it done, and he does find a way to get it done. Just saying, I'm just
trying
throwing
to
it out there.
I'm trying to poke holes in like one of the more popular dogs and one of the more popular fights.
Well, so what do you do in these situations where you're going to have a popular dog, but you're also going to have a popular, like both these guys are going to be owned, like they're both. So do you lean one way in these situations, or do you lean away from both? Like how do you, because it sounds to me like you don't want to be high on either of these guys. Like you want to come in under the field on both. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I mean, I think I'm more inclined to come in like at or above the field on the dog, just like price considerations and ownership considerations. Because like, the people around Brener are not as good as the other people around Oralb. Like, you've got two of my favorite fighters on the entire card, Lucendo and Pantoja, like right there. I'm getting very little Oralb. I've actually got Oralb ranked pretty low, which makes sense for the way like my ranking projection works. I'm just like not getting there. And a lot of times I will override something like this and I'll end up, I've tried to like wipe last week's card from my mind, sort of, and I can't remember. Oh, it was the first fight. It was Mashate. And like I wasn't getting any of that fight. And I just kept like forcing it. And then, the fight ends and you're like, well, shit, I wish I would have like kind of went with my stuff a little bit.
God, that fight was so tilting. He fucking lost. He lost. He got whooped. He lost. Everyone's like, no, he had the bigger get the fuck out of here. He lost. He lost in the DFS scoring. He lost on this. I don't know how I don't know how you can score when both guys are banged up. Like they're both bruised and bleeding and stuff like that. And then one guy just has more volume and there's no like, control time difference or that much of a control time difference or takedown difference. How the hell do you score it for the other guy? Like I don't understand how they score it. Like I don't know how you take the guy who is outstriking you from a volume perspective and say he lost that fight when both guys are sitting there bruised and bloody, which they both were. They were both bruised, bloody, like on their face and shit like that. Like they were both fucking hurting. You know what I mean? It's wild to me. I don't get it.
I guess what it comes down to is like at the end of the day, the judges, they don't have access to the stats of any kind. And, again, I tried to wipe that card from my mind mostly, but
yeah, but you brought it up. I wiped that fight.
No, I know. But
I wiped that fight from my mind. I'm trying to
think like how they score it for Mashate, and all I can think is like more damaging strikes because they don't have access to the stats.
It's got to be that like when he landed, it just felt to them like it was more of a bigger shot or something like that because he didn't land more and they were both bruised and bloodied. So like I don't understand it, but
that's
a UFC thing. So
yeah, last thing about Oralb though that our buddy Matty Ice pointed out, he's got the hat. So fade the hat at your peril.
I'm in. Yeah, Dan's right. I'm in. I want the hat. I want to wear the hat. I'm in for the hat. I want to see the hat, beginning and end. Yeah, we all want to see the hat. So I agree. Let's go in on some Oralb here, and hopefully he crushes and breaks the slate for us. So let's go to I think Dan is really high on this fight because he just talked about Lucendo and Kavich. Lucendo is a minus 420 favorites. Like I said, there's a bunch of 9K fighters on the card, massive favorites, right? This is one of them. I would assume she's going to be a little lower owned too, Dan, than the other 9Ks in that range. So I assume that's one of the reasons why you like her, but talk about her and why you like her here in this fight.
Yeah, I'm actually changing my, I realized I had Kavich as my pick on the site and,
Dan, you're a mess right now, man. You're just a mess right
now.
Well,
I went back and forth on that one, but the more I dug into it, I think Lucendo, I think Lucendo can really just end her if she wants.
Dude, Kavich has beaten Balbita, the Mopple. I know she's fought a ton of chicks.
Yeah, I know she fought the top of the top like ages ago and lost to all of them. Her current resurgence is against like very low level competition,
literally like it drops off she was losing to, like you said, the top tier of girls, but then she fights Vanessa Demopoulos and Diana Balbita, and it's like, yeah, she won a 3-round she's a decision fighter, you know what I mean? She's not really that dangerous now, and I think Lucinda is just way more dangerous than her and has upside like from a scoring perspective. But Kavich is 7K. Like if she does win, she could put up a decent DFS score. So how do you play that for DFS? Are you just higher on the fight in general, or are you just going to be higher on Lucendo?
Yeah, I'm pretty low on Carolina. I'll probably bump her up a little bit because I'm getting single digits. And, as always, women's MMA, she's got the volume. Lucendo, like, one of the things is like one of the knocks on Lucendo is just that she's inexperienced and kind of has like has shown not the best IQ at times, but Carolina has shown the same things. Like not the best, not inexperienced, but like not the best IQ. So, I mean, if you're going from like a physicality perspective, Lucendo's got her covered pretty much everywhere. And I think this could just be like, I think this could be like pretty sloppy, you know, just like a lot of high variance in fight actions. And it's really wild to me that Lucendo I'm projecting her at 17%. And like, you know, week after week, we look at the projected ownerships and we're like, oh, I don't know about that. I look after the fact and our shit is like pretty dead on. You know, we're within like 2 to 5 percentage points on the majority of these most of the time. So I've learned to kind of just trust it. If she's going to come in like sub 20, like I want to be like 30s.
Yeah, you want to get over on that. I agree with you. I think she's a good fight. Like right now, I'm actually pretty low on this fight. Might want to bump Lucendo a little bit. I mean, I'm getting her ahead of like some of these other 9K guys, like Kaio and Patrino, just slightly, but I might want to bump her up a little bit more here because, like I said, at the end of the day, you're just pretty much ranking out those 9K guys and saying, okay, which ones do I want like the most of? And you got to be under on some of these guys, you know. So at the end, you're going to be under on a few. Even if you want 50, like you can spread it out, but I still think you got to have 1 or 2 guys that you're just under on in that range. So yeah, I mean, this is a fight that I could see being over on. I mean, I could see playing some Carolina just because, like, if she does win 7K women's MMA, we know the striking piles up. Like, those strikes can pile up for a score. So I don't hate it. And honestly, like, some of the guys we're going to talk about next, like, man, they got, like, I'm really low on some of these, like Anthony Smith, and we'll get to him in a sec. But yeah, I struggle with those type of plays.
Yeah, I really like getting different at the top on this slate. You know, there's like really not a whole lot to like at the bottom. So, you know, a lot of slates, you kind of, you know, you hunt the mid range, you pick, and you know, you mix it up at the bottom, and those are your points of difference. I mean, there are plenty of like sub 20 owned people up here in this top range. So I'm going to go there. They're 100%.
Do you have Lucendo by finish or decision? How do you have her winning?
I have it by finish, man. I think she can. I think she can out physical her and break her. Like Kavich again. Like she's in a resurgence, but that's mostly due to much worse competition.
Yeah, I can tell just by looking at who she's fought in the last 3. I like, yeah, this is, you know, she's definitely not fighting. I think Lucendo could finish her too, but let's go to the next fight here. I do think this fight could be a banger here. We've got Burrito and Shore. Burrito is super dangerous, dangerous pretty much everywhere, in my opinion. He's 8,500 right now. He's, minus 180 to win this fight here. Jack Shore, kind of a little opposite. He wants to grapple and wrestle, and I think last fight he just had like he had a perfect matchup against Americani where like he was even beating Americani on the feet, you know what I mean? And then he was winning exchanges on the feet, and then he was winning the ground exchanges and the grappling and you know, down there, and then he finds a submission. But like this dude was dropped by Ricky Simone. Like I just don't trust Shore, and I think Joe Anderson Burrito's just so dangerous everywhere. And that power is so real. I think he finds a finish against Jack Shore, and I think he puts his lights out. So I really like Burrito here. He's 8,500. He's every single time he's winning or finishing, he's got big upside too. You'll see in the 4 fights he's finished, 3 of them he had over 100, you know, fantasy points, and he's 8,500. So if he drops 100 plus here, Dan, you're gonna want him, I think, in your DFS lineup. So I think he's got massive upside. I really like him here. But if Jack Shore wins, it's probably with takedowns. He's probably got some control time. Because if this stays on the feet, I think he gets murdered.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be great for him if it stays on the feet. This fight is going to be popular for good reason. I think, though, Like Burrito, kind of similarly to Oralb, he's projecting to be one of the highest owned on the slate. But, I mean, his ITD doesn't even really particularly stand out all that much from some of the other options. I mean, his price, this is a very competitively priced fight. And I think that's kind of what it comes down to. But sort of like the situation I was trying to allude to earlier with like Yontop and Padilla last week, like if you're going to go under on Burrito, I think you want to be over on Shore or at least even, because he's up there too. Just which speaks to like the lack of dogs here, because I know how publicly popular Burrito is and how not as popular Shore is. So it speaks to how much like you're hurting for dogs on this slate.
I'm pretty high on this fight. Like I got a good amount in DFS of this fight.
Yeah, I'm getting
because I see the paths for both these guys in DFS mean they're probably scoring pretty well for their price. I think.
Burrito definitely has high upside, but there are also like, I mean, there's a reason this fight is so competitively lined.
Yep.
And I mean, there are definitely concerns with Burrito. Like even the last fight with Pierce that he won, which was kind of like, he throws up a ninja choke after being like held down on the ground. After Pierce taunts him, I think we even discussed that last week too, but it's like Burrito he will come out sort of, I don't want to say sluggish, but like he doesn't really come out on fire all the time.
No.
And it seems like there will be a point in the fight where a switch just flips and he's like, oh, fuck, like I'm in a fight. I need to beat the shit out of this guy. And he just goes.
Dude, when you funny, it's like you look at Burrito and you look at Shore and you're like, okay, one guy looks like a killer and one guy looks like
I think
not in the MMA, you know what I mean? Like, but he's really good. Like, I'm not saying he's not good. He's good. It's just like it's crazy when you look at these guys, like the difference.
Yeah. Well,
and
like
Burrito like messed around on the ground with Pierce. Like it was just weird. It was weird. Like he'll do shit that you're like, why is he doing this right now? Like,
yeah, well, Pierce isn't really all. I mean, like, I guess he doesn't seem to be all that dangerous, like on top. He's sort of one of those guys that'll just like hold you down. It seems like, at least from what we've seen more recently too. But like, yeah, I don't know. Jack, I think Shore is he's more well-rounded. He's probably he might be better even in some areas like wrestling or on the ground.
I just don't know how his chin's gonna hold up if this is on the feet. If you're
Burrito's been knocking people out,
then you're in trouble here against Joe Anderson Burrito if he finds the shot.
I mean, Lucas Anderson and Weston Wilson, though, it's like
I know, yeah, I know, but then he fights Pierce, who like kind of similar to Shore, like fighting style wise, I guess, like a little bit.
I think Shore is probably a little more skilled.
Maybe a little more skilled, but I'm saying like style wise, I think they're kind of similar a little bit.
Yeah. I think Shore's probably a little better on the feet. I don't know. Like, yeah,
he's not better than Burrito though. And like I said, the one thing that Americani fight, like that was a really good matchup for sure, in my opinion. Like he was better at the best things that Americani was supposed to be like good at. He was just better than him. You know what I mean? So it was a perfect matchup.
I'm struggling to kind of like take a stand here, I mean, because Shore
sounds like you want to be on Shore. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
But he's one of the most popular dogs, which is always like,
Well, you can't fade all the popular dogs.
You can't. Exactly. That's what you run into. It's like you start to over leverage yourself because you're like, well, this guy's going to be expensive, this guy's going to be, mega owned and his opponent's not. But then you just end up with like all shit.
He's 7,700. He's 7,700 in a decision win. He could legitimately score you 85 to 95 fantasy points in a decision win. Like that's a decent dog,
Yeah,
so.
I'm getting a good amount of them. I toned it down a little bit. Maybe I'll reverse course on that. But now that we've talked through it, I feel like this is and this is definitely like a pitfall that I fall into all the time, is like I'll just like out leverage myself. and
Yeah.
start like fading shit just for the sake of fading it.
Just
It's
for
like,
like
wow,
ownership and purposes and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And everything
I
is
used
so
to do
flat.
that all the time. Like,
Yeah.
just
It's a
like,
hard
fuck it, I'm not
impulse.
doing it.
You want to be contrarian. It's a hard impulse to break,
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's like you want to be contrarian, and then you're like, well, I don't need to be that fucking contrarian, especially if I'm playing like 150 teams.
Yeah.
If you're playing though like 5 teams, you do have to be that fucking. That's when you're like, okay, you need to actually take stands, and that's like the difference between like the mindset of playing 3 lineups or 5 lineups or 10 even, and playing 20, 50, 100, 150 is like you got to have a different mindset depending on how many lineups you're building for DFS. And I think that's where people get messed up is they're like, okay, I'm going to try this 150. And then they go into it with the same mindset of like building 5. And you're like, why the fuck did I fade, 10 fighters or something like that?
We
And
talked
you know what
about
I
it
mean?
last week. You like, diversity in your combinations. And like, I made some mistakes last week, but I was really happy with that. Still live going into the last 2 fights. And like,
that's all you can ask for, right? That's literally all you can ask for. Like you're live going into like 2 fights, the last 2 fights. Like that's it. That's what you want. So yeah, good fight for DFS. I think we both agree. Let's go to a fight that I'm not sold on will be a good fight for DFS here. We got Kyle Bahio against Paul Craig, 9,700 for, or I'm sorry, 6,700 for Craig. Bahio is 9,500 on DraftKings. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a fight that I'm super low on for DFS. I do not like targeting this fight. I think it's a terrible matchup for Paul Craig when you get someone like Kyle, who is very skilled on the ground, which obviously Paul Craig is. And like, if I'm Kyle, like, why even fuck with him on the ground? Like, just stand, and I think you can win the standing game and like win a decision that way. I don't think that's what even happens though. I think he'll still try and like mess with them on the ground. And like, that's the one thing Paul Craig is always live to catch someone. If they try that crap on the ground, he's always live to do that. But I think this could stand for a lot. And I think Kyle could win a decision that doesn't score very well for DraftKings purposes at 9,500. So I'm pretty low on this fight here. In general, I'm going to be, very, very under or fading probably both these guys, or at least like extremely low on the field. What do you got here with this fight, Dan?
So I totally disagree with you. I mean, like, obviously, I think we both probably agree that Kyle is the pick, right? But here's the thing. So I think Kyle has also he's gotten like a reputation as a bit of like a decision merchant, he's a very like smart, cerebral fighter,
Position over finish. This is my point with these guys. Their position.
They're the fighting nerds.
He fights smart though. Like, those guys don't score well. Like 9,500, I struggle to pay for those type of fighters.
Here's the thing though. His inside the distance number has him implied to finish the fight like nearly 60% of the time. And he's going to be owned. Why am I getting lost here? He's going to be owned like probably a little bit more than 15% because everybody has it in their mind that he just goes decision. But I mean, the odds imply that more than half the time he's finishing this. And if you look at Paul Craig, he's got a lengthy career in the UFC. He's been to decision exactly 1 time. So he's either finishing you or getting finished. And it's like Craig, he's one of those guys that is fine with being on his back. That's where he operates the best. So it's like, it seems like a soft breeze can knock them over, but that's because they're kind of like taking opportunities to sort of like fall down and drag you down with them. Like, Craig's takedown game isn't amazing. You look at his takedown defense, it's sitting at 37% because he's allowing himself to be knocked down.
That's skewed. Down. Yeah. That's skewed.
He's trying to initiate these things on the ground. And I just think Kyle, he's a good grappler. I think he can stay out of danger. And I think, Craig, you've seen him before go submission over position and submission over defending himself. So I think, there's a world where Bahio they engage. Craig is trying to like drag him down. He grabs the leg or something, and Bahayo just, pounds his face out while he's trying to, catch him in a triangle or some shit. You know what I mean? I think there's just like high probability for like knockdowns, takedowns, and an early finish here. At sub 20% ownership.
The more you talk about it, the more I hate it, and like Craig a little bit, the more you talk about it. Like,
I think Craig, like, you have to play Craig. You have to. Like, he is super live to submit anybody from his back.
You're putting out though, that's like Craig's path. Like literally, that's Craig's path.
I'm saying that like that
back, throwing some shit up.
I'm saying Craig's path sort of like feeds into the environment necessary for Kaio to have a score that justifies his price tag.
But what if this doesn't happen in the first round of the fight and it happens in the second at 9,500? You're fucked. Like what you're asking for is this situation to happen in the first round and pretty quickly, which you're talking about the guy getting on his back, like jumping to where like he's getting on his back directly in the first minute or so. And then from here, going to a submission where he gets caught and he's getting his face pounded in. Like you need that to happen. And it could. I mean, it could happen. It could happen really fast. But if it doesn't and it gets out of that first round, I think you're in trouble.
Out of the first 9,500. So, yeah, let's think it out. Like, you lose the 20 points. Obviously, quick win bonus is ideal, right? But outside of that, then you've got, like, round one finish, where 90 points for the first round finish, you can still score enough with, like, in-fight actions outside the quick win. Where it starts to get dicey is round two. So, round two, what you're really needing, though, is, again, what we were talking about before. You need, like, knockdowns and takedowns and grappling exchanges. Maybe you've got, like, sweeps, reversals. There's so many things that can happen in this fight because of the way Craig wants to fight down on the ground. So many actions that score big that can happen. And, I mean, obviously if the slate were different and Cal was, 30-something% owned or more, I'd be like, stay the fuck away. But he's not. He's, 15 to, he's going to be like sub 20% owned. I think he's worth a shot, especially at the ITD number. It's dicey though, for sure.
Fair enough. I mean, listen, obviously it can happen, and he's, to finish, he's very high up there to finish the fight. So, I'm just saying you need a lot to go your way. I think in this scenario, you need a lot to go your way.
Odds imply that he gets a finish in the first. 30% of the time, which obviously, take those for what they are. But if he's going to be owned nearly half that, like, I think that's a good spot to get over, especially on this slate.
Yeah, that I agree. I mean, it's definitely going to be easy to get over on Kyle at 15%. Like,
I'm not going to get crazy, but if he's going to be like 15 to 17, I think like 25 is probably a good place to land.
Sounds about right. I mean, if you're going to be over on him, you don't have to get like 2 over on him. So.
And Craig is a must play. And like, I think Craig's sub prop is also a must play. I have 850 on my sheet. I think it's actually dropped to like around 7 in most places, but
that's like his path to winning. Like literally his only path. Like, so
but he's finish or get finished. So you want to target fights that he's in regardless.
Yeah. Listen, if you like him to finish, then you gotta like that. I think. The submission prop. So let's go to the next fight here, where I guess for me anyways, I'm going to like this fight a lot in the favorite. Obviously we got Michel Piera versus Poteria. Piera is a -600 favorite. I think that he styles up on Poteria. I think he could win this via KO early. I think he could win by submission. I do think that the submission prop for Piera at +350 when his KO number is so high, his KO number is like -135 right now, and his submission prop is +350, and that just seems crazy to me. Like from an odds standpoint, like I do think that he should have a better chance of obviously knocking him out, but it just seems crazy that it's that high for a KO, and the submission prop is, down at +350. So I do like that look from a betting side, but I think this finishes, somewhat early. And I think he puts up a big DFS score. He's probably my favorite I just want to make sure him and Oralb are probably my two favorite 9K plays in DFS here. They're the two guys I got the highest stand. So what do you see here in this fight? And are you as high as me on Pier?
Yeah, I think he'll be a core play for me, for sure. Yeah, Potia, he's sort of like he's done a lot better than he should have in his like stint in the UFC so far. He's like surprised us a lot. I feel like he's come in as a huge dog, and like if he hasn't won, he's put up more of a fight than expected. But this is definitely like a step up for him.
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, this is definitely a step up for him. Bellato, who he faced, not very good. And his last fight, which, went to decision, surprisingly. Everybody thought that he was just going to get sent to the hospital. But there were like 2 illegal blows in that fight, which kind of like weirdly slowed things down and probably kind of benefited Potia because he got like a little bit of a breather. He's usually a major gasser. So, I mean, all that is to say that like Pereira should, dispatch him with no problem. But we know what should happen doesn't always happen. And Potia has power in his hands. Like he doesn't really have all that much going for him, but he can stand there and bang and land one. And Pereira's going to be one of the most popular fighters on the card. Potia is not really getting much ownership at all. The line has moved like very hard in the direction of Pereira since salaries came out. So even though he's 9,600, he is actually a bit of a value as far as the money line is concerned.
Yeah, I think he's like by far the best 9K play, but
yeah, no, definitely. Like I think he is after Pantoja probably the best play on the board. Like I've got my ranking formula that takes ownership into account. He's actually rating out better than either Pantoja or Erceg, and I give a pretty like sizable bump to the 5-round fight. So, and even just to go back to the last fight for 1 second, Kai was actually my highest ranked in my rank formula of all the fighters, including the 5-rounders by like a full point, which is a lot. But anyway, back to this fight. Yeah, Pereira's the best play on the board. Potia is live to knock anybody out. I think he's 6,600. He can do it anytime and be optimal. I think this is a great fight. Yeah.
I think you'll be waiting for this fight for a very long time. I don't see it happening anytime soon. So sorry. Spencer Smith has been trying to get me and Big T to fight for years now, it feels like. So
they're weight classes for a reason.
Yeah. I don't think this fight is happening. Even if there weren't weight classes, I don't think this fight would be happening no matter what. But just too much love from Big T. He's too nice of a guy. I swear to God, like people don't. I think people know this, but if you don't, like Big T is one of like the nicest people you'll meet, like in person. Like you never would want to fight. He's not going to do anything where you're going to be like, this guy's a dick and want to like punch him in the face. Like he's just always a nice guy. Like that's how he is. You'll never feel any different too. Like everyone feels the same way. They meet Big T and they instantly like him. So. Yep. He's just a likable guy, you know what I mean? He's not a guy that you want to punch in the face when you meet him. So,
JVC on the other hand, me and him are getting in the octagon sometime.
Oh, totally different. JVC, you meet him, you might want to punch him in the face when you see him. Like you just might. I mean, or wrestle him or whatever Dan decides he wants to do. Dan, I think you could do whatever you wanted in the ring to JVC.
It's funny. I was like realizing this the other day, but like before I like really, really got into like MMA, it's like you picture getting into a fight and you kind of just like picture like throwing punches at someone's face. You know what I mean? But it's like the more fighting you watch or the more MMA you watch, it's like now I just picture like hopping on someone's back and just like choking them out.
Dude,
like, when I think of a fight, that's what I think of.
Dan pictures like backpacking someone and like literally like I don't think you realize like how hard that is to like actually do in real life. Like I mean, if you're someone who's trained and like you're fighting someone who's not, like maybe it's easier for you. Obviously, it's easier for you, but like
I wouldn't know where to start.
That's not a position that like you get into like super easy. You know what I mean? Just like get the bag, take the bag down, and then like backpack them, and yeah, that'd be good. I think you could backpack JBC though. I'll say that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think you could do it.
Absolutely.
Totally. Yep. All right. Good fight to target. Let's go to another 9K fight. And this is what I mean. You got guys like Patrino and Smith here. Patrino 9,400. All the power in the world. He's super talented. Going up against Anthony Smith, who I think is towards the end of his career. I mean, you listen to him talk like at the weigh-ins, they were, doing their little like interviews and stuff. And I heard Anthony Smith talking, and, I think it was DC was asking him, like, what is it for you after this? Like, how are you viewing this fight in terms of like how it goes and what's next for you and stuff? And he's like, of course, if this fight doesn't go my way or I get smoked, it could mean, it's it for me. But if I go out there and, show something and give a good performance or, then it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to fight again. So it just feels like he's in that like in between with fighting right now, Dan, where it's like, he thinks he could keep going, but he also in the back of his mind with that answer that he gave DC, he definitely knows like if I get smoked, like this is it. Like I think I'm done. So, he's got a lot of pride. Obviously, sure at this point, no one wants to go out there and just get smoked by this young guy. He believes though he can beat him. Like he believes he sees a path. I think this fight for DFS, I'm lower on as well in the 9K range. Patrino definitely's got upside to KO him. I just respect Anthony Smith enough to go a little later in this fight before it happens, if it does. And Patrino in 2 of his 4 fights has gone the distance. So I definitely think that this fight could go to distance. I actually have this fight going the distance. Patrino to win by decision. I think it's like plus 230 or 215, somewhere around there. So I like that look as opposed to the KO number. But Dan, what do you see here between Patrino and Smith?
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with like Anthony Smith quotes in the chat, but I mean, bottom line, you're not going to step in the cage unless you think you can win. Like you have to believe that you can win. So he believes he can win. A little more narrative straight. I like saw an article leading up to this where he's basically like, he said he pretty much straight up said like he's afraid to retire because, I mean, you see this with guys in sports. It's like their whole life has revolved around training and fighting or whatever sport that they do. And it's like the prospect of leaving that behind is terrifying because then it's like, what is my life? So, to that point, Anthony Smith probably sticking around a little longer than he should. The only person he's beaten in the last 4 years is Ryan Spann. And we just saw Ryan Spann last week. Guy's not very good or, he's not very good outside of the first like minute and a half.
No, you can say he's not very good.
He just dies and everything goes out the window. It's pretty horrible. But yeah, that's the only person Anthony Smith has even really looked all that competitive with. His last fight with Roundtree has been a bit of a meme. I'm fully expecting at the end of this card for, Dana to do his thing. They're going to ask, what's next for Anthony Smith? And he's going to say, oh, I'd really like to see Anthony Smith retire. So I think it's pretty likely the glue factory, if not at least the hospital after this. But I agree with you that Patrino is like one of my least favorite options up here in the top range. And it is because, like you said, he's been going to decisions. He's got good ITD numbers, like the odds, but his last few times out have been less than expiring, like Anthony Smith, less than inspiring. Yeah, I don't love it, especially not at the ownership. Anthony Smith, 6,800. I think, to that point, like he can hang around.
Is this true? Matt Brown? Did he announce retirement? I don't know. I didn't see that, but
Well, then we potentially have 2 retirement announcements happening today.
Shout out Matt Brown, legend Matt Brown. I love Matt Brown.
Yeah, this shit is ugly, but also, Patrino, could he drop it to Smith? Because I mean,
dude, I kind of agree more on the overrated side of Patrino, like Matty Ice is saying, than like I think what it is though is he is dangerous. He knows he has crazy power, right? He knows it, but it's just something like, at a certain point, you miss opportunities, and then you get in there, he gets tired. He's still dangerous though when he's tired, but he definitely gets tired. And then, vet like Anthony Smith, like if he can withstand the first round or round and a half of Patrino, listen, anything can happen. And Anthony Smith, crazier shit has happened. Like I don't think it is crazy to be like, oh, Anthony Smith is live in the later rounds. I view Anthony Smith as someone already on his way out. Like, yeah, he took the fight. He thinks he can win. But man, like if I'm giving an answer, like I'm not giving the answer like with the out of like, yeah, well, if I get dusted, like, then we got to reevaluate. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like I'm going to go in there and I'm going to show everyone that I'm not old and I'm not dusty and I can beat this guy. And that wasn't his answer. So it's got to be in the back of his mind. I'm just saying, not good. I think what it is though, Dan, is what you said. He doesn't know what to do with himself if he retires. I think that's what it is. I think it's like that fear of like, well, what's next? Even though he kind of has it set up, I think, with the booth, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's still just afraid.
Some guys just like to fight too.
Yeah. He's definitely a fighter. How many fights does he have? Does he have like 50 something fights in his pro career? It's a lot. I know that. So yeah, he's got over that. So yeah, he definitely is probably
he's 37 and 19 professionally.
There you go. It's a lot of fighting. All right, let's go to the last 2 fights here. This fight, very interesting. I want to get your opinion on it. Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo. We get Aldo back here. Aldo is a dog to Martinez. Martinez a minus 144 favorite here to win. I think this fight is very interesting. I know Jonathan Martinez is dangerous. I don't think, though, that he comes out here and just smokes Aldo. I don't think he finishes Aldo. I think this fight goes to the cards. And I think Aldo is very live. Like, I think Aldo, the last fight we saw Aldo, which is interesting, the last fight we saw was against Oralb. And the one thing that Aldo, we know he's done is kind of later in the fight, he will fade a little bit. And a guy like Oralb, that's going to happen because Oralb is literally on top of you or on you the entire fight. So like going from that style to someone like Jonathan Martinez, who you don't have to worry about, like, let's be honest, like Aldo was worried about getting takedown. He's got great takedown defense. So he was in the beginning of that fight kind of waiting back too much. And his corner later in the fight was like, you got to go, you got to go, you got to throw, you got to kind of lead it a little bit more. But it's just tough when you got Oralb, who's just going to constantly shoot and hold you against the cage. Like Oralb didn't do anything special where I was like, wow, Aldo got dominated. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. It was just like,
you could even see Aldo being like, this is what are we doing here? As he's being held against the cage. Get out of the position, but
it was 0 of 15 for takedowns from Oralb. You know what I mean? But it was just the fact that Aldo, you still got to get out of that position. You know what I mean? You still got to like, Jonathan Martinez isn't doing that. So he does not have to worry about that one bit. What that means to me is he doesn't have to be like the non-aggressor and wait and stuff. He can actually go to it. He's super light on that lead leg too, which we know he checks kicks really well. Jonathan Martinez does have mean kicks though. But I do see a path where Aldo wins this fight here, and maybe he comes out and he just looks really old and dusty, but I don't see it. I'm going to go with the dog here, Dan, and take my shot here. I bet him, and at 7,900, I can play some Aldo at that price tag. So it's a solid fight, I think, for DFS at the prices, but I don't think it's like a fight you need. I'm just going to be more on the dog side. What about you?
Yeah, so I think if you're playing this fight, you are kind of you're hoping that it ends inside the distance, which I think they're both capable of putting each other out for sure. Like they both have power. Martinez, I don't think he's going to get a leg kick like TKO like he has,
That's not happening here against Aldo.
But I think both of these guys can land a finish. It's not a priority for me. I'm probably going to come in around the field. I don't even really have a super strong lean in the fight. I picked Martinez. I'm going with youth. I'm going with, more volume, more power, and just, we're talking a lot of narratives today, but I think like for a card in Brazil, it's sort of warranted just given like, the nature of the judging sort of down there and just like the nature of how fight cards are built in general. But Aldo's coming back. He's picking up a check. He's been doing boxing matches. I don't think that's quite like really panned out for him. So he's back. They're in Rio. So why not, come back for the card? I think this is great for Martinez. It kind of like elevates him and he's like kind of hovering around the top of the division. So it's a great name for his resume if the UFC is trying to like sort of propel him forward. So the fight makes sense from that perspective, but I see there's a ton of paths for this fight to fail as well. Aldo doesn't really push pace. He's lower volume. It's just not.
I'm going to call it right now, Dan. Greasy split. It's going to be a split decision here for the winner, which will not score well.
Yeah,
if it is. And I think it is, honestly. So whoever you like you can get if you like Jose Aldo by decision, split decision, that's plus 700. Jonathan Martinez is plus 650. But
so the Martinez that I actually like, if you think Martinez wins inside the distance, which I think if he does, he's pretty much going to have to, because again, we talked about like the judging. It's like it's Jose Aldo in Rio. So like you're either going to have to
best of luck.
really fucking put it on him for 15 minutes, or you're going to have to put him out. And like most of Martinez's finishes come outside of the first round because it's not really so much like one shot power, but it's more like accumulation. So I think you could do a lot worse than like plus 900 in round 2, plus 1200 in round 3 for Martinez.
I like that because I agree with you. I don't think he's not finishing him round 1. Like I don't see him just coming out and steamrolling him, but
yeah, I like those finish odds. Aside from that, though, this fight is not. It's one you got to have because, it's again competitively priced. Either guy could go to sleep, and you're going to want to be there.
Yeah, I could see Aldo dropping round 1, trying to he hasn't been in the cage in a long time, and he's trying to feel him out. He, like you said, he's kind of lower output anyways. And so like that first round's kind of feel out. And I could see Martinez like getting up on the scorecards early. And then Aldo comes back almost like he's saving energy a little bit because he knows like later rounds he struggles. And in rounds 2 and 3, he finds a way to get it done. So yeah, it should be a fun fight. Hopefully a fun fight. And yeah, you got Martinez. I got Aldo. We'll see who finishes out on top. Let's go to the main event, which, again, very interesting to me. Steve Erceg versus Alessandro Pantoja. I love Pantoja. I've liked him in every single fight. Like, he's been in the last, 4 or 5 fights. Like, he's just a beast. You know what I mean? He's just a beast. He's really good. He's tough. He doesn't quit. Even when he's dead tired, like that Royval fight, he blew his gas tank in a round and a half. Like literally a round and a half. I was like, this dude's dead. Two rounds in, I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. Like, because I was like all in. I was telling all my buddies, I was like, I just don't see where Royval is better than Pantoja. I was like, you can't bet. And I know a lot of people liked Royval.
We were on Pantoja heavily. We bet Pantoja big. One of the bigger bets we've ever had.
In watching that first round and a half, you were probably shitting yourself as he was going back to his stool after that second round. Like, oh my God. Because he won them, but you were like, he's dead. Like, he's dead tired. But
really competitive.
Even when the dude is dead tired, he just finds ways that, you know, in those championship rounds, like there's something to be said for like, dude, just out dogging your opponent. And that's what he does, man. And that's what he does. He's got really good top pressure when he gets on you. He knows like when to kind of position over submission, like I say, or when to like go for it. I think he's pretty good in that aspect. I don't know if he's going to go out the way he went out against Royval, against Erceg. I think he went out against Royval thinking like he could just run through this guy and finish him quick because he's done it. And then it didn't happen. And he's like, oh, fuck. You know, now I gotta find a way to withstand and hold out. And he was definitely not wanting to mess with Royval on the feet. Like that was evident. Like that was clear. Royval, yeah. So to me though, I think it was more I don't think Erceg is going to have maybe that much of an advantage in Pantoja's mind, but I do think Erceg does have like solid striking and he's a good grappler too. I think in situations he can stay safe from like submissions and stuff. I think he can find ways back to his feet where like Royval got stuck on his back for like so long in that fight, like so many rounds where he would spend minutes. And then like with the last 30 seconds, Pantoja, like he'd find a way up finally. And Pantoja would be like, all right, let's stand for the last 30 seconds. Like I do think Erceg is a little more tricky and can find ways, but he hasn't fought anyone who's going to test him like that on the ground, like Pantoja yet. You know what I mean? That's the one thing I will say. But if he can keep this fight standing, I do see him as being more live in that scenario where it's more of a striking match than a grappling and wrestling match. Even though I think Erceg's really good in the grappling and wrestling, I think Pantoja has a little bit of an edge there. So he wants to keep it standing.
He has a big edge there.
Yeah. So it depends on where this fight goes. I just think Pantoja is going to be able to get those takedowns. I think he's going to be able to get like that top pressure is going to be a little much for someone like Erceg, who's only fought like we said, he's coming in, he's fought Schnell, Costa. I'm not saying they're terrible. David Dvorak, he was a massive dog. People forget 3 fights ago, he was a massive dog to David Dvorak. Everyone was coming in. They didn't know who this skinny kid was. He looked like, he was just walking out into the octagon, never been in a ring before. And
it looks like he was the Best Buy.
Get dusted. Yeah, literally. Like that's what he looked like.
And no disrespect to the Best Buy employees, but doesn't look like.
By the way, I said on this show here that he was winning that fight outright, and I told people that. And as a massive dog. So it's just one thing though, like when you see a dude's talented and then like he goes out there and he like actually performs like that. And I just don't think people knew how talented he actually was. And I knew David Dvorak wasn't like some killer. So I was like, okay, you got to be that way. But the other thing I noticed in the Costa fight was you got to be someone who will put pressure on Erceg. If you just let Erceg, if Erceg can just walk you down and mirror you and just stay on you like that, he's going to win fights. But if you make it like grimy and dirty and you put the pressure on him, he gets clipped. He got clipped. He relies on his chin a lot. He got clipped against Costa multiple times when Costa was going forward. And I do think Pantoja can have success going forward, whether it is striking or wrestling, if he does that. If he just lets Steve just mirror him, though, he's going to be in trouble if he lets him just walk him down. So I don't think that happens. I think Pantoja wins this fight, and I really like him here. The winner of this fight for DFS is going to be, I think, on the winner. It's going to be optimal. I would 100% lock this fight in your DFS lineups, though. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, this fight's projected to be in total 80% owned by the field. RIP to 20% of the field. Just put 100% of this fight in your lineups. Erceg with pretty much any kind of win, especially the way Pantoja fights. Very like pretty much a lock to be optimal and just about any kind of win he can get. Except for like worst case scenarios, which I'm having a hard time even thinking of. But I think Pantoja wins this pretty handedly. I think Erceg at 30% is going to be over-owned. I'm going to have less than that. And I'm going to have, like pretty much all these recent times that Pantoja has fought, I'm going to have like 70% plus. I'm going to be betting him big. I mean, maybe this is wrong, but man, this like money line seems way too tight. The ownership on Erceg seems a bit high. I mean, granted, he has a puncher's chance, which like if he wins, he's a great play, right? But man, I just think his odds of winning are much lower than what he's being owned. And if Pantoja's only going to come in at like 50, he might get steamed up to like maybe the 60s, but still, I think like 70 plus Pantoja. I'm super happy to get there. I think Erceg, I think people just like him, I think it's just kind of like a feel good, like, hey, this dude came from nowhere, beat a ranked guy. Now he's ranked. Now he's getting the title shot. People love an underdog story. And like, it's great. It's all in good fun, but like, I just don't think he's quite there at the moment.
Yeah, this is a massive step up for him. Like I said, he literally could have lost that fight to Costa. That's the first fight on this card now is Costa versus Boros. And he could have lost that fight. Like, I know he didn't. And at the end of the day, he didn't. But like Costa made a bunch of low IQ mistakes going for submissions and stuff like that put him in bad spots when he didn't have to. And so there was like multiple times in that fight where I was like, wow, Costa really fucked this fight over for himself.
Right.
Like, so that's the thing is like, he's beating guys, but it's like he had that big knockout.
He's done what he's needed to do to win, right? And it's like to that point too. It's like the Dvorak fight. Like he's legitimately like falling behind in that fight until he lands like a massive shot and then a head kick and just kind of like flips the whole direction that the fight's going in. And like side note, that's third loss for Dvorak on a 3-fight skid. He doesn't have another fight scheduled coming up, hasn't fought since. So take that for what you will.
Take it from guys who are like dangerous, like Dvorak. Like, yeah, that was a good fight for him. Like, he wasn't as dangerous. Like Erceg really could do what he wanted. And, I think Costa's dangerous. I won't say he's not dangerous. Matt Schnell has no chin, but
none.
It's just like go from that to the number one guy, like the champ is kind of wild to me. But the line is telling me, Dan, that he's got a pretty good chance. Like the line, it's similar to the Brandon Royval line. It's even better in that scenario. Like it's going even more in Erceg's favor than Royval. And I'm like, holy crap. Like I thought Steve Erceg was going to be a plus 250, plus 300 dog.
Well, so the line for the Royval Pantoja fight, if I'm like remembering correctly, the day of the fight, the line moved like heavily in Pantoja's favor. And I think there were like rumors afterwards that there was a Royval injury. So that could have played into it like pretty heavily. But yeah, I straight up, I do not get this line. I think it's like, I think Pantoja.
I got a question. If Royval fought Erceg, who would you take?
Royval.
Yeah, me too.
Me
too. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying about this. It's just wild to me. But maybe Erceg again, like we said too, it's easily could have just been they needed someone to fight on this card. A few guys were hurt. They're like, dude's just got to step up, step over a few people and go fight them. And I just think it's not his time yet. It could be his time at some point though. He could definitely like, he's good. Yeah.
If the card were different, if the slate were, if there were better, dogs around Erceg's price range, he wouldn't be getting this ownership. People are talking. I think. I mean, hey, I'm always a proponent of jamming the 5-rounder, so I can't hate on it too much. But I think people are like really talking themselves into Steve Erceg, who again, like he can win. I'm not saying he can't, but man, I'm gonna slam Pantoja and feel fucking great about it.
Same here. I know that JBC has a different opinion on this fight, so if you want his bets and stuff, you can go join over at Run Pier Sports. RPS 15 is the promo code for 15% off your first monthly or weekly payment, and you can go check out all of JBC's bets. I got my bets posted. Dan's got all his content up, core plays. Everything should be up or should be up soon. So
that's coming
check
soon.
It out. Yeah, so check it out. RPS 15 is the code. Dan, since we both agree on this fight, let's give a favorite bet of the day before you get out of here. Just your number one bet. Who are you slamming for a bet here?
Wait, did you say that JBC is on Erceg?
I did say that, yes.
Where you see that? That's really surprising to me. Wow.
Because he told me he was yesterday before we went on for the NBA show. He told me he really liked Erceg, and he was going to tell me why on this show today, but he's not here. So, what are you going to do? But I know that. So it would be 2v1 on this show if JBC made it on today. He did not. So,
I mean, here's the other thing. Like, let's just go back to the judging real quick. Like, is Erceg winning a decision? I don't think so.
I think Erceg needs to knock him out.
And Pantoja's never been knocked out.
Yeah. The way this fight ends on Erceg's favor is Pantoja gasses out 3 rounds, and then in the 4th or 5th round he finds a KO.
I don't think he gasses though. I think and that's like the funny thing. Like also,
I don't either.
Back to like judges, home field advantage, whatever the fuck is like. Yeah, his body language is not good during a lot of the fights, but like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The body language and his output late in fights just don't match up. But, in Rio especially, bad body language is not going to matter.
And like I said, I think he went out against Royval and made a mistake just thinking he was going to run right through this dude and
think the same thing today.
He could think the same thing today. It's just when you do that and you're like dead tired for like 3 rounds of that fight, you got to watch that fight after and be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't just do this. You know what I mean? Just
reminded me. So I think it was actually in the Royval fight, but there is a point like midway through the fight or, like round 2, 3, whatever, where Pantoja has top control over Royval. And then Fabiano like breaks in with like, he's saying that they're like, oh, Fabiano's telling me that the corner is telling Pantoja.
Yes.
And rest and like get a breather or whatever. And it's like, it's like, that's pretty funny, but it's also like, okay, so you are like, in top control and getting a breather, like that speaks pretty well to the skills on the mat.
I remember them talking about like, oh, he might stand him up, like the ref might stand him up if he doesn't. And then he started to try and move to mount after like a minute, and they let it go.
Stand him up in Rio. Like they're gonna let him work. They're gonna let him work down.
All right, let's do it. Let's give our favorite bet here. Dan, do you have a favorite bet for the people before we get out of here?
Oh man, I mean, the ones we mentioned, I got a bunch.
Well, give one, your favorite.
Okay, give one. Dude, let's do Paul Craig. Paul Craig by sub.
Paul Craig is your favorite. Damn. I was gonna go with the dog too, but like just a slight dog, and you just pull out fucking Paul Craig by submission. And plus,
buddy.
That's Dan's favorite. I'm gonna go Kevin Boras. Kevin Boras money line. Kevin Boras by decision plus 350. Money lines plus 105. I like him as a dog today. So I'll do that. If you want more of the bets, everything else we got at Run Pier Sports. RPS 15 is the code. Get that 15% and come hang out. Come hang out in the Discord. Talk the fights, golf, you name it. We got it. Bet you will have best ball content coming up shortly. Baseball, NBA for Showdown tonight. We got it all over here. So check us out. And again, thanks for hanging out with us. Hit the like button on your way out. For Dan, I'm JSU. Thanks to JBC for the no show. We're out of here. Peace.